Okay, somebody just needs to explain this to me at this point. Disney seems to be able to just waste money left and right without a care in the world. And I don't think that's a good thing. I think that's very bad for investors. Everybody deserves a little ROI, which is hard enough to come by if you're so focused on the three-letter issues like DEI, ESG, and all the other baloney sausage that comes with that thought process. Well, Disney's knee deep in all of that, trying to convince the public that they're turning it around, and they're going to start having to convince the federal government that they're turning it around. And I don't think that they're going to be able to do that, nor do I think that they're going to be able to stop leaning into all this identitarianism and ideologies that basically try to disassemble society as we know it now, which Disney seems to be, well, bent on. But we'll set all that aside and talk about the major issue of the day, which is the fact that their streaming platform really doesn't make any money. They throw billions and billions of dollars into it, and they really have only maybe cashed out it, on paper anyway, $47 million. Of course, I'm talking about Disney Plus, and I'm talking about all their terrible television shows that come out from their different outlets like Pixar and Marvel, and of course, Lucasfilm. Now, Lucasfilm is a great offender. They spend extraordinary amounts of money and they have very little to show for it. I would say that Kathleen Kennedy and her ilk are very irresponsible with money. And if you've watched any of their shows, you would probably agree. The last offensive thing I saw, of course, was The Acolyte, but they have the Skeleton Crew show, although I don't think it has the kind of viewership that it needs for it to stick around very long, which would be some that would eclipse what we would consider a point of earning, which none of these shows have ever done. And the worst offender has come to light, the fact that we now have all the financial data for a show called Andor. Andor exemplifies what many critics are calling ridiculous bloat. Well, yeah. I mean, this happens with most streaming shows, it seems, these days, and the viewership metrics do not justify those expenditures. And this is something I've been talking about for quite some time, and you've probably been hearing if you've been watching this channel for, well, the last few months, even. Over the course of the last few years, we've pointed out just egregious examples of overspending with really no returns to justify it. Disney is in probably the worst situation they could find themselves with a load of properties from Fox that they haven't even bothered to utilize, exploit, release physical of the films and television shows that they now own, which would help to offset some of those costs. But of course, they won't do that because they are no longer going to issue physical media so they can control everything that you watch and make changes as they see fit to things that they shouldn't touch because they were a product of their time and should not be censored, but we'll set that aside for another time. You see, Disney has disclosed that Andor's second season alone cost a record-breaking $290.9 million. Now, mind you, and we may get to this later in this particular video, but this is just the money we know about now through the end of 2023. We don't actually know what 2024 money looks like for the show, and we haven't seen this show. This is the highest ever annual spending on a Star Wars production. Now, to put it into perspective, this figure actually eclipses the $280.7 million that was spent on The Last Jedi over an almost 11-month period that is significantly surpassing the $243.8 million allocated for The Force Awakens during its production cycle. Now, we of course know that both of those productions cost more or ultimately ended up with more expenditures, but we'll move on from there and just say, well, this is the worst that there is, at least as far as the television production goes. Now, if it is exceeding films, is it also exceeding other shows? Well, the second season's budget is expected to climb even higher. Filming, which commenced in November of 2022. Wait, it's the end of 2024. 2022. Wow, over 2 full years now, right? Is my math correct? Yeah, the prolonged shooting is inflating the costs much further. Obviously, the interruptions from the SAG-AFTRA strike and many other things got in the way, but principal photography finally wrapped in February. So the filming wasn't as long as it could have been, but we've been waiting since February for the post-production to be done. It's been a year-long process with expensive visual effects, and it continues to drain resources. There have been rumored reshoots or rather pickups that have been done along the way. And Andor boasts less than impressive viewership numbers. Well, I'm going to say it outright. Terrible viewership numbers, with its finale only amassing 674 million minutes watched on Disney minus. Yes, and they are subtracting more viewers and viewership minutes with every single show that they release. The figures pale in comparison to the scrutinized budget, and it casts a light on the fact that this certainly isn't a new problem for Disney Lucasfilm. The Acolyte, which is another Star Wars spinoff that I was forced to watch, I'm not watching Skeleton Crew, had a budget exceeding 230 million according to the UK tax filings. My goodness. And despite the heavy investment, the Acolyte struggled with viewership, garnering over 50% fewer minutes watched than Andor. It was half as much viewed, and they're spending more money on Andor, which didn't deserve a second season. Imagine what's going to happen with Ahsoka. This directly led these budget numbers, and the viewership led to the cancellation of a season 2 of Acolyte, despite the best efforts and or threats being made by Lucasfilm. Stark contrast raises some critical questions about Disney's return on investment. There is none. There is no return on investment. You've got the high costs on shows like Andor and the Acolyte not being able to be justified. There is no interest in this type of Star Wars, deconstruction Star Wars, Disney Star Wars. There'd be interest in things that felt like Star Wars or were actual Star Wars, but Disney isn't even bothering to bring people in to do that. They have to have all the terrible storylines based on deconstruction, identitarianism, and other Marxist ideological perspectives in order for them to feel like it's something worth making. Both of these shows mentioned in this article were spectacular failures by my assessment. Your mileage may vary, but the disparity suggests that Disney may be prioritizing higher production values over sustainable viewership growth. And while that means, oh, we got a lot of things that look pretty, but nobody's watching them, that should be telling you just about enough. You should know there's no more reasons to make any more of this stuff. At least not the way you're currently making it. If you could make these shows for 50 million, then we might be able to talk, but that wouldn't be able to maintain how pretty they were in order to justify spending this kind of money. Andor was set 5 years before the original Star Wars trilogy and is lauded for its grounded storytelling and extensive use of practical effects and physical sets, which everybody here knows I'm a huge fan of. Those elements undoubtedly enhance the viewing experience, and they should be reducing the cost, but they also contribute to the bloated budget when you add in all those special effects. Now, the commitment to quality is almost commendable, which I just said a moment ago, if somewhat misguided because, well, nobody's watching it. You should have to make a pilot for anything you intend to produce before you're given a green lighted budget. But the way the streaming world works, that's not what is happening. And that is much to the detriment of Disney, the makers of these shows, and of course, the investors. And the investors are getting hurt worse than anybody else, to be fair. Moreover, the high costs associated with filming in the United Kingdom, where the productions are subject to stringent financial disclosures and benefit from substantial government reimbursements, add another layer to the financial strain. And Disney's forced transparency in UK based productions reveals the true extent of Andor's expenditure to people like you and I. That's a practice not commonly seen in the US streaming shows, where budgets are typically concealed within broader financial statements and kind of glommed all together with everything else that they produce. From the few people that actually ended up watching Andor all the way back then, it received a commendable amount of critical acclaim. It rated one of the highest Star Wars shows at an 87% audience score on Rotten Tomatoes when they were still doing that. It remains to be seen if the second season can maintain that kind of momentum without ballooning costs further, but I don't think it can, since we are now years separated from the show previous, and a lot of people have just become bored with anything Lucasfilm and or Star Wars. It's almost worse than apathy at this point. It's willful neglect, for lack of a better way to put it. In contrast, as far as viewership goes, The Acolyte serves as a cautionary tale. Despite its substantial budget, its inability to attract a robust audience led to premature cancellation. Well, I don't know if it was premature. I think it came just in time. In fact, I think they should have canceled it halfway through the run. It would have given us audience members something to cheer about at the end or early end of such a terrible show. And as Marvin suggests here in the article, if Andor continues on a similar financial trajectory without the corresponding increase in viewership, Disney risks the same fate with this show. I think this is the last Andor we see, and I think it won't be gone soon enough. And this is the point at which we have reached the end of the video. At least my part. It's just the beginning of yours. It's audience participation time. So first and foremost, do me a favor. Please, I implore you at this point, double check that you're still subscribed to the channel. And if you're one of the 65% that are not, that watch my videos, do take the time to take advantage of the free subscription offer. Turn the little red button to gray and become one of the growing numbers of Culturians out there. We're trying to get to 50K here rather quickly and 100K by the end of 2025. I can only do that with your help, so let me thank you in advance for that simple action. Be sure to turn on the notifications. Make sure that you hit the thumbs up button while you're down there, and give me some of your thoughts about The Acolyte and its terrible, terrible disappointment. At the same time, tell me what you think the future holds for Andor in its second season. Do you think that'll be successful? Is it going to be something you're looking forward to watching? And do you think Disney has any way to justify exactly how much money they're spending on these shows? Let me know those thoughts down in the comments section below. And as always, I will say the following: be sure to take care of yourself, take care of others, wash your hands because it's good hygiene, and a very Merry Christmas to each and every one of you. And for those of you of the Jewish faith, Happy Hanukkah. And until next time, see ya for real.